Right, let's get straight into this. Now, pretty much we know that you go to different parts of the world and even within different countries that people have their own kind of dialect, argot, whatever it's called, and things have different meanings. I'm a Cockney, and in East London we have loads of terms, things like Cockney rhyming slang. We might say we're going to go up the apples. Well, that means we're going up the stairs. Now, what's the relationship between apples and stairs? Well, none, unless you know that apples and pears is the term, and pears rhymes with stairs. So if you go to East London, well, certainly 30, 40 years ago, and you met Cockneys, you might think they're speaking a different language, but then it made perfect sense. Now, when you're coaching something, any sport, there will be typically technical terms, jargon that relates to the practices and the skills of that sport. I used to box and coach boxing, and when you box, you've got to be able to punch, as you know. And when you punch, it's not just a punch, but there's jabs, there's crosses, there's hooks, and there's uppercuts. Now, I'm not going to bore you with what they are, but they're different types of punches. So if you're coaching someone and you're coaching someone to use an uppercut, they must know what it is. They must know what the technique is and understand how that punch works in the context of a fight situation. So the importance of a common language is central to coaching. However, whilst the language is important, it must be supported by the practices themselves. In other words, people have got to be able to jab well, to cross well, to hook well, and to use the uppercut well. And this is where things like deliberate practice, which we know from an evidence-based point of view is fundamental to developing those kind of skill sets. And equally, not only is it the technical aspects, but also the habits of mind, the dispositions, the mindset, whatever you want to call it. Because if we go back to boxing as an example, yeah, it's a technical thing, but so much is psychological in terms of your ability to take pain, to maintain belief in the situation, to persevere, to maintain that level of concentration. So there's an whole package of practices, essentially skills, attitudes that need to be developed. Now let's put this in the context of teaching. If we're coaching a teacher, it's about improving that person in some way in relation to their role. And in a coaching situation, which is in some ways different from mentoring, we are focusing on developing the capability very specifically. So let's suppose we've got teachers who we need to coach to improve their teaching practice. We may be mentoring them as well. Remember, the roles are similar and the skill sets are similar. The focus area is a bit different. But let's suppose we feel that an evidence-based approach is a good approach for helping someone to improve their practices. Well, they've got to be familiar with what that means. When we talk about eye effect size methods, well, unless you're familiar with the work of John Hattie, what it means, it isn't going to have much meaning to someone. And if we talk about things like core principles of learning, like activating prior knowledge, teaching key concepts, providing feedback, and working within memory systems and chunking and avoiding cognitive overload, it's not going to be terribly important. So they've got to be familiar with the approach, but then we've got to get people to start applying this practically in their lesson design and in the way they teach. And that's where the practice comes in, and that's where the coach is particularly important in the supporting role and in the mentoring role. So, in summary then, let's use Downey's summary because it kind of captures it nicely. And the language is what allows the client, our protege, the person that we're coaching, to become self-correcting and self-generating because they're able to look back and say, well, yeah, I didn't really activate the prior knowledge there. I didn't provide the best advanced organizer, and yeah, I think I talked too much and the students got lost, that kind of thing. So we want to develop that self-directed aspect, the metacognitive part of managing oneself and improving oneself, but also to develop the necessary mastery. Because if you don't develop the mastery, you don't achieve an increase in performance. That's going to affect the belief system and the motivation and the old metacognitive aspect. So we want to keep people thinking well, metacognitively, and we want to ensure that they're seeing visible improvements in the performance. And that's fundamental to the process of coaching.